What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical once again. Bit of a slow Tuesday, I guess, today. Well, not really. Not from a content standpoint, because it's been a double video day for over here on the channel. We got two videos today. We got a Best Armies in 40k video and one about the Norn units from the new Tyranid Codex, which is very exciting. Did not expect to see those spoilers coming out today, but it is cool that we got them dropped just now. Pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, so I don't know if we have too much to talk about from a competitive 40k standpoint. If we want to, we can go through some of the preview articles that went through. We can also go through some X and 1 lists for tournament play from this past weekend. There are a couple cool cool results. We got some Drukari. We got some X1 and 1 Grey Knights. Some Dark Angels, Adeptus Sororitas. So lots of interesting lists to talk about that we can dive into, and also just generally getting hyped for the Tyranid Codex. Yeah, so good stuff. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming in. No changes in the meta. Yeah, it is. I think between now and probably, I would say the week after next. This week and next week is probably going to be a lot of like twiddling our thumbs. Honestly, I kind of want to like, I don't know. How many people would watch if I did like a Space Marine playthrough or something? I kind of want to do a video about that, but for the next week or so, we're basically only talking about Tyranid spoilers because there's not too much else to do until we see Eldar get nerfed. Holy crap, it's brutal. Just taking a look here at some of the results, like it's just Eldar all the way down. We got Eldar, we got this one was funny. Seasons of Wa GT. It's an orc name. Eldar in the top 6 places. Top 6 Eldar. Oh my god, dude. It's so bad. Got a little bit of a shake up here for Big Sky Open. Orcs and Dark Angels, it's cool. But then we're back to Eldar. Oh my god. Kill me. Jesus Christ. It's too much. It's too much. Can you send your friends list from local RTT? Yeah, for sure. Super chat me. Can't believe the Eldar win rate is 70%. Yeah. And the interesting thing too is like, so I was actually a little bit of a spoiler. I'm playing a video. I want to talk about some historical like broken lists for 40k, because this has not been the first time that we've had a list that's like unstoppable in Warhammer 40k. It's been a while. But it's not been it's not unheard of. And Eldar keeps popping up. It keeps coming up. And it's just like this faction. Somebody has at GWHQ has this huge hard on for Eldar. And like every Eldar Codex that comes out, they just keep like pushing the stats a little bit more every time. And it feels like, you know, until they break and then they nerf them and then it starts happening again. And it's crazy. It's crazy, like, looking back through, like, 6th and 7th edition Eldar releases and people being like, guys, this is nuts. You can't keep giving the fastest faction in the game also the best survivability and the best damage output and the best melee and the best range attacks. You can't, like, make them every single good in every single situation. And they keep doing it. That's absolutely nuts. Absolutely crazy. Broke 70% with no mirror matches? Yeah, that doesn't sound right to me. Ugh. Oh, my God. New NID stuff looks insane. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know about insane. It looks good. It looks good and cool. Nothing I've seen has been like, whoa, that's crazy. I'm hoping that the like Vanguard onslaught, the forward operator one is detachment is good, because it does. That's the one that's most interesting to me. The fast like flighty stuff is really cool. So I appreciate that. Do I think War Dog's OC of 8 is too much? It does feel that way sometimes. I think the fact that they beat, like, I don't know. The fact that they beat 5-man squads on objectives is like a little bit crazy. They don't beat 5-man battle line squads that are OC2, but they beat 5-man non-battle line, and it's just like, but on the flip side, War Dogs they have a tough time like standing on objectives for a while, so I'm of two minds, I guess. I like it less with Imperial Knight armigers because they're so much harder to kill that being OC and an objective is a little silly, but it is what it is. Wonder what faction will win the Nova Open?
He had one loss versus Eldar. Literally nothing he could do.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Ryan. Go ahead and shoot me that list. Although orcs have been, they did see a little bit of success against Eldar this week, and I know some orc players are very confident in that matchup. So I think like accepting of the fact that they will die by the end of the game, but they'll probably die with a higher score, which is not too bad. Was that a sisters at 4-1? Yeah, there's a 4-1 sisters that we can talk about. So we got some good stuff to talk about. What are my hopes for NID detachments we haven't seen yet, like the Synapse Nexus? So somebody was saying in the comments of that video, when we talked about the detachments, that Synapse Nexus was like a return to the old Synaptic Imperatives rather than being like a psychic-focused detachment. I don't know if they had any like source to back that up, so I have no idea if that's the case, but if that is the case, then it's like more of a toolboxy detachment rather than the other stuff. But it's kind of like the piece of the pie that's being occupied by Invasion Fleet right now, so I'm not 100% sure what to think about that. I mean, I'm hoping that like there's something that just like pushes damage output, maybe. The real problem with Tyranids right now is like it's entirely the scoring faction. It doesn't really like shoot people very well or like fight them very well. So I don't know. Give everybody devastating wounds or something stupid. Something that's leaked on the Tyranid Discord. Leaked imperatives are all heavily melee focused. Yeah. I don't know about like random Discord rumors. Once somebody gives me a screenshot, then I'll I'll probably be a little bit more interested in that for sure. It's a good question because like the psychic weapons just being psychic weapons or like just being normal weapons with the psychic characteristic are like it makes psychers like also able to be buffed by anything that buffs normal attacks. So the differentiation between psychers and not psychers doesn't really matter so much anymore. So if there is like a psyker focused attachment, like I don't know what you give it. Like feel no pains, I guess. Like all your psychic bugs get stealth or something. I don't know. Something weird like that. All right. Here's the list we're talking about today, chat. Pull that up. Oh. It's frozen. Hello? Let me try this again real quick here, chat. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. My Chrome froze, by the way. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there. That was weird. Yeah, I couldn't do anything all of a sudden. But now we're back, I think. All right, let's give that a go.
Recently got into NIDs, running 3x6 man gun warriors and 3x swing primes because I love them. Think it'll be payable when the Codex comes out?
Lewis, I can't prognosticate so much. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I appreciate it. I think that if the if what was previewed holds true, I think that will probably be fine in the Vanguard Onslaught. Assuming that, so there's like a couple assumptions to make, right? So the first one is how the Vanguard Invader keyword gets applied. Whether if it just gets added to datasheets when the new datasheets come out, then I think that'll be great. Because the reason for that is that all of the abilities that they previewed check for unit keywords, not model keywords. And the keywords of a unit are the amalgamated keywords of everything that composes that unit. So if you attach a Tyranid Prime, which they said will be getting the Vanguard Invader keyword, into any of the warrior units, then that combined unit is it's a warrior unit, it's a Tyranid Prime unit, and it's a Vanguard Invader unit, which means you can apply all of the buffs for Vanguard Invaders to that unit. So you could give them advance and charge, which is super cool. If that's the case, I think warriors get like a new lease on life. If there's like something like, wow, Tyranid Primes, that are in flying units or something, get Vanguard Invader, then I think it's if that's a requirement of the detachment, or the detachment restricts the use of non-Vanguard Invader units, then I think it's probably not that great, but we have to see the rest of the detachments, obviously. I do think, I was actually having a discussion in the Discord just a couple of days ago. We were like, well, how do you make things like melee warriors good? And you're like, well, they don't have advance and charge. They're just a move 6 guy. So if you give them advance and charge, suddenly they go from being like just stone unplayable to being pretty okay. And I think that is the potential that a warrior unit with a prime inside getting the ability to advance and do stuff is pretty good. So yeah, I think that's hopefully what that whole thing does. But obviously there's a couple of caveats there that it might not work that way, just depending on how the idiosyncrasies of the rules end up. All right. Sagwolf played double. Wraith Knight lost 700 points to your army turn 1. Oh boy. That is not great. Yeah, that sounds about right. And it seems like part of the problem is that people are trying to put more and more true line of sight blocking on the table to protect against the towering keyword, so that Wraith Knights don't alpha strike you. But the problem is that Wraith Knights are so broken because Phantasm is so powerful that they're then able to use that to protect themselves as well. So the more line of sight blocking on the table to prevent those 700 or 1,000 point swings on turn 1 from occurring, just also benefit the Wraith Knights because they also mean you can't shoot them back. So you can't win. There's no there's no terrain that makes the matchup better. I literally think that the best terrain against Eldar is to just take all the terrain off the table, and if you go first, you just kill everything that isn't a Wraith Knight. And you just hope that that's the game plan. Because the interaction between Towering and Phantasm is so toxic, it's insane. Anyway, we're talking about some orcs today. So this is from an RTT, I guess 2-1. Look at all the characters, every single character. So Mazrak Scragbad, the big squig dude, Captain Badrock for Flash Kits, Boss Stickrot for Commandos, and Zodgrod Wordsnaga, for Grots, a Beast Boss, a Pain Boss, and a War Boss with Follow Me for extra movement. 2 units of Beast Snaga boys. We can put the Beast Boss in one of those. The Flash Kits for Badrock, the big Gretchen unit for Zodgrod. I don't know how I feel about the Gretchen unit, by the way. It gets so many bonuses from Zodgrod, but it's so big, and it's so susceptible to anti-infantry shooting, even with the +1, the -1 to wound and stuff. For 170 points, I don't know how I feel about it. It's good for turn 1 screening, I guess, but would you not rather have more boys in a truck? I don't know. Another unit of Gretchen, more units of Gretchen. So many Gretchen, holy crap. A big Commando unit, a big Knobs unit. It's probably for the Here We Go guy. 2 units of Storm Boys, 4 trucks. So what goes in the trucks? The Flash Kits for sure, right? Flash Kits, the Knobs, and then the 2 Beast Snaga squads, I guess, and then all the Gretchen or ground pounding. Yeah, seems pretty straightforward. I guess the benefit is that if you have the Gretchen and the Commandos, then you actually have kind of a real push turn 1. So you can kind of lock people in their deployment zone, and then that lets the trucks get up. So I guess in that context, I like Zodgrod's unit a lot better. Because you can... a unit of Commandos, if you just put it on the line, will either stop your opponent from moving very far, or they will just kill something on the first turn, and then sort of bring your opponent around. And then you can just flood the midboard with Gretchen, and then all the trucks come behind them. And then your opponent's like, well, do I shoot the trucks, and then boys come out, and then they wah on me, or do I shoot the Gretchen, and then the boys get out of the trucks anyway and wah on me? So, I don't know. Yeah, this seems great. I guess if there's a question like if we're looking for updates, I don't have like too much to say, to be honest. Yeah, Commandos with Snickrot, the great man himself. He gives them he stealth. Let's look out Snickrot real quick. I have to find his data sheet because I don't know if I have it marked. He's super down. Just gonna run through the thing here. So I think Badrick with the flash kits, by the way. So I'm just like scrolling through Badrick's data sheet. Badrick with the flash kits, I think, is really underrated. You can pop your ammo run. You give the unit lethal hits. He himself is like kind of baller, because he shoots three damage shots with sustain. He gives the entire unit rerolls to hit. The downside is that when you're in a transport, which a lot of times you are with these guys, you don't get the benefit of the rerolls, so because you're applying the weapon to the transport, not the unit itself. But then all of the entire flash kits unit also gets the rerolls too, and then they get lethal, and just like a bajillion shots. So they are a little bit sad against. Oh, they get cover with him. They're a little bit sad against -1 damage stuff or like really high toughness, but in most other situations they're very strong. That unit I think is underrated so far. So they get a redeploy in your movement phase, not end of enemy turn, but that does mean you get to see your secondary pulls, so that's actually pretty sweet. And it deploys immediately. Yeah, so that's cool. If you end up going first and your opponent doesn't give you anything squishy to hit with the commandos, you just deep strike them anyway. You just like push them. So you can actually deploy them aggressively, but in like a defensive position. So if you go second, they don't die. And then worst case scenario, you just like redeploy them for a 9-inch charge. And then benefit of cover, which doesn't really matter because their saves aren't that good. And you're probably in cover anyway because it's 10th edition. And then he has a bunch of TO damage melee attacks. But I think especially if you're trying to push the threat of those big units as much as possible, the characters definitely make sense. Orcs definitely are looking really good right now. I think orcs are probably like orcs are gonna be one of those like pretty upper mid tier factions once the things shake up, because they're definitely already doing pretty well, and they have a lot of pretty viable builds. And just like the game plan's very consistent. You just score primary. You just run up the table and score 1 million primary points as quickly as possible, and then like call that a day. And I think that's pretty good. All right. Yeah. What else are we gonna talk about? Lists and stuff. So before we go too far, I did want to talk about something from the video this morning. Because I think it's worth discussing from like from a housekeeping standpoint. So I made a video this morning about best list in 40k. I talked about a Thousand Suns list that had Kairos Fateweaver in it, and I discussed Kairos' Vect ability, which is different than all the other Vect abilities. There's like for some reason inconsistency in the Agents of Vect CP taxes, where they don't share a common wording. Of course, Games Workshop, they tried so hard this edition, and they just fucked it up again. They just keep forgetting to template their abilities. So here's Kairos Fateweaver. So his ability... oh, here's Inky. She's coming to commentate. Hey, what's up, girl? How you doing? Getting scritched off camera. His ability... triggers each time your opponent uses whichever stratagem you vect and increases its cost by 1. I had mentioned that stacks infinitely. Oh gosh, what did I do here? All so that the more they use the stratagem, the more its cost increases. What I didn't realize is that I thought, based on the wording, that was like, there's very clearly how the rule works. I didn't realize that some people think that there is a rules commentary section that actually stops that from happening, because the commentary has an entry that says that if you have a CP modifier that doesn't state a duration, it only works once, which would mean that because it's ambiguous whether the end of the battle clause here applies to when your opponent uses stratagems or the stratagem cost increase or both, that the cost increase might not have a duration. So it will only be limited to one at a time, which I totally understand. And I think it's like a very valid interpretation. I think that it is a little silly to assume that an ability worded so that not keeping that rules commentary in mind, it would very clearly increase the cost of the stratagem each time. I think it's pretty obvious that's the intention. But I did want to discuss that quickly because I know there was like a bunch of questions about it and a bunch of discussion around the internet. I think that it certainly could go either way, and it certainly needs another errata. But in my opinion, it's pretty clear to me that the each time clause there is sort of transformative. But yeah, I just want to discuss that before we jump into the heart of the discussion. All right, chat. Should we talk about some friggin' lists? I know we looked at a quick Adeptus Sororitas here. Should we jump into that one? Let me know if there's any factions you want me to take a look at. Yeah, the Calidus has a similar ability. We had a discussion about the Calidus. I had assumed, actually, upon the initial reading, that the Calidus also works the same way, because the Calidus is different than the regular Vect. The Calidus says that I think that the cost to use the stratagem again is increased. I think I've sort of come around on that. I actually think that it's probably, by the strictest definition, I think it's the case that the Calidus probably repeats, but I don't think that's the intention, because there's actually other enhancements that have the same wording as the Calidus Assassin. It's very convoluted because they didn't template this fucking rule. So there's like the classic Vect that the Archon has and that most Vects have. Then there's the Calidus Vect that like the Calidus Assassin alone, and then a couple of other like enhancements and non-ability Vects have, which is the cost to use the stratagem again increases. And then Kairos has his own version that says each time you use a stratagem, the cost increases. And I think it's very clear to me that the intention is that Kairos is different because this is the only one that has the each time clause. I think that it's probably the case that they meant for the Calidus Assassin to work one time. So the people who said that I agree with, but I also agree that Kairos Fate Weaver's like sort of up in the air, but I do think that that's the intention of the rule. It's just a templating problem, chat. So bad. I don't know how they keep getting this wrong every edition. It's insane. Anyway, let's talk about some Adeptus Sororitas. So, Big Sky Open had a 4-1 Adeptus Sororitas, which is rad. Very cool. We have a Dialogus, Junith to increase CP, and then Morvenval, probably to go with the big Morvenval Beatstick Squad. 1 Battle Sister Squad, 1 Immolator, 2 units of Arcoflagellants, 1 Castigator, double Exorcist, a single Mortifier, the Paragon Warsuit Squad from Morven, 1 Retributor Squad. Oh, here we go. We're getting some armor cracking from the Imperial Knights here. Plus a Seraphim Squad. This feels like light on the ground. So the Battle Sisters can, if I remember correctly, attach Junith, so that's probably where she lives. An Immolator can carry the Retributor Squad so that it fire supports for them, so the Immolator can give them rerolls to wounds, so they can source rerolls somewhere. The Seraphim Squad is just a great utility unit, they're just solid. And the Arcoflagellants actually sort of slap for their points value, because they're 45 points, Excuse me. And they get kind of a billion attacks. Let's pull their data sheet up real quick. Arco-flagellants, where y'all at? So they have a 4+ feel no pain and 2 wounds. So they're actually like kind of hard to kill. Despite the fact they're only T3. They're like if Fulgurite Electropriests were actually like worth their points value, basically. They have Hazardous, and they get +2 attacks if they use their trigger word. With Sustained 1 and Twin Link. So they're AP 0, which is a downside. But they go to 6 attacks with Twin Linked. And the Hazardous ability is actually kind of fine for the unit, because if you lose models, then you trigger the +1 to hit from the detachment ability, so then they hit on 3s instead of 4s. They also have Acts of Faith, unlike the previous version of Sisters, and unlike Adeptus Mechanicus. Eat your heart out, Adeptus Mechanicus. The entire faction now has Acts of Faith, so they can actually use Miracle Dice too. Not that you would really need to outside charges, but yeah, these guys, I mean, the average damage seems pretty solid. They're just 15 points a model, is that right? Yeah, 3 Arco-flagellants, and you get 18 attacks out of them that are twin-linked. So if you haven't taken any damage on the way in, it's only 9 hits, but then, or it's more than 9 hits, no, because it should be 12 hits because they have sustain. So, and then they're probably wounding most infantry on 3s re-rolling. So they're probably wounding like 10 or 11 times. So they'll probably win the fight with most like chaff infantry, and they're way cheaper. I think that's honestly that's like the biggest benefit of Adeptus Sororitas is that you just have so many like tiny idiot units. If you wanted to, you could take like triple Crusaders. They're 22 points a unit for 2 model units. You could take triple, what's the word? Death Cult Assassins, which are 35 points, I think, for 2 models. And then you could take like triple Arco-flagellants, which are 45 points each. So you spend about 300 points and you get 9 units, like individual units that are like most of which are sort of fast and really good at killing infantry. And like nothing trades into that outside of like Desolators, which will kill them all, but who cares? You're having trouble against Desolators anyway, I think. And then you can just like fill the rest of your army with actual units. I think that's like probably a step too far, but the benefit of Sisters is they can take these little tiny guys they generate Miracle Dice when they die. They can punch infantry pretty well. They're super good for utility. You can strategic reserve a bunch of them. It's actually pretty sweet. Can't think of situations where you're not wanting a Canoness. Yeah, the problem with the Canoness is that she doesn't attach to anything good, right? The Canoness, like you want the Canoness on Retributors so that you can shore up their kind of like they're based around getting the heavy bonus, which you're never gonna do because that's just not the kind of unit that Retributors are. So you would want to add the Canoness to the Retributor squad, but you can't. They can, yeah, they go into BSS and Sacrosaunts. But there's like way better attachments for Sacrosaunts. Like Palatines and Dogmatas are so much better for Sacrosaunts. And you never attach to the Battle Sister squad because like who cares? So yeah, it's so sad. If they just let them attach to more units, I think the Canoness would be okay, but I don't know. It's unfortunate. Unfortunate. But interestingly about this list, we're not actually playing the Palatines in the melee build. Everything's a gun in this one. Besides maybe the Paragons, but even then, they don't punch that good. Then we just have some armigers in the back to do damage, yeah. And I think this is like sort of how you have to build Sisters, which is unfortunate for Sisters, because you would rather be playing the in-faction stuff, but their armor cracking is so terrible. But you can source decent armor cracking out of Knights and Imperial Agents, and so you just do that, I think. Honestly, I think the best like Sisters list has like a Porphyrion in it, or like I guess not maybe not a Castigator because it can't bondsman, but like a big Acastus Knight or a Dominus Knight or something. But anyway, congratulations on Sammy for 4 and X and 1ing with Adeptus Sororitas. What should we talk about next? We have some, there's some Tau Empire we could dive into. Go as Aeldar. Somebody Aeldar. There's also some Tyranids if we want to continue the Tyranid hype train. Canonized rerolls on Sacrosanct plus the lethal hit aura from the Triumph. We'll be trying it tomorrow. It doesn't seem too bad. I mean, I think the Canoness itself is like it's a decent profile. Here she is. She can take like the cool, the like one-shot flamer weapon, which is kind of sweet. Like she herself is okay in melee. Like, I guess it's only 3 attacks. I didn't realize that. Maybe just kidding. Why is this 3 attacks? What is this weapon? And I think if you were taking multiple Sacrosanct units, you could have one that's like the offensive one. But it's just like they only have 2 attacks each Sacrosancts, right? So you're not even buffing that much output. It's just, I think they tried too hard to like striate the melee profiles, where they were like, well, the regular humans will have bad melee, but the Space Marines will have mediocre melee, and the Custodians will have great melee. Except that all they did was just make like Space Marine melee good situationally. Anything that's base strength 3 will never be like, will never fight melee ever. And then Custodians are like the best, like unparalleled good in melee. So it's like, whatever. Missed the 9th edition Canoness. Missed the 8th edition Canoness. What about that stupid thing? The one who was like advancing charge and came back to life and had like 9 attacks with exploding 6s or whatever. Pretty crazy. All right, Darius asked for Dark Angels, so let's hop into Dark Angels, which was. Let me go find it real quick here, chat. Here we go. Big Sky Open. We're actually at the same event. James Walsh went X and 1. Now, interesting to see if this is going to be the Gladius Task Force list with the Deathwing Knights in it. Ooh, there's a bike captain already. We're getting spicy. Okay. We are in GTF. And we're playing 2 bike captains! What is this list? What? So there are 2 Centurion Devastator squads with grav cannons. Okay. 2 Deathwing Knight squads, only 5 mans. But we're really like forcing through our rapid ingresses there by splitting them into little bitty squads. It's a good table presence because they're hard to kill on an objective. A Devastator squad with grav cannons, 1 Inceptor squad, 2 Ravenwing Black Knight squads. So that's where our bike captains are going. They have Plasma Talons, so one of them has a Bolter Discipline, so we're going to be shooting overcharged plasma weapons that then explode on 5s. Plus a Scout squad. These guys are nutty, by the way. Scouts are so good. They're Infiltrate and Scout. They have both, so you can like deploy them up near your opponent's deployment zone and then move them depending on who goes first. They can redeploy. They can go back into Deep Strike and then come off the table edge. And they get both special weapons and missile launchers. So they have a sturdy shotgun, so they have assault weapon, so they can advance and do actions. They have a heavy weapon, so they have a D6 damage gun. And you can also put a power fist in them, so their melee's not that bad. For 70 points, this unit's like nuts. I kind of feel like Space Marines should just audible scout squads in their army. They're so insane. And then 2 exaction squads for backline holding. Wow, this is aggressive. This list is going to push super hard. We're just going to use the chaff to hold backline stuff. That's wild. Absolutely crazy list. Let's look at these Centurion Devastators real quick, by the way, chat. I don't know if I've spent too much time on their profile. We'll have to dig through the entire Space Marine Codex to find them. Here we are. So the grav cannon, there are only 3 shots. Anti-vehicle 2. They reroll hits against people on objectives. Okay. So I think the wombo combo is that we're gonna source full reroll. We can shoot at stuff that isn't Oath of Moments, because you get full rerolls to hit on stuff on objectives, and then you wound vehicles on 2s. So if it's a vehicle on an objective, you reroll all your hit rolls, and then you wound on 2s, so you don't need to reroll your wound rolls. So you don't necessarily need to shoot at whatever was Oath of Moment to actually get value out of these guys. So that's kind of cute. I like that. If you shoot anything else, it's a little bit sad, but 3 damage is good into heavy infantry, which is solid. The AP 1 is just unfortunate. And there's not much you can do about that, so... I don't know. But you do also have the D3 damage blast weapon too, so that's also solid. And they're probably good off the side, the table edge too. They can kind of like clear like chaff off objectives really well. I bet these are sweet strategic reservers. I bet that's where they get used the most. Yeah. Defend my home objective with policemen. We'll put those cops where they belong, in my deployment zone. This list is wild, chat. Man, lists like these make me like happy for 10th edition 40k. Because this list is just like right off the wall. Double Centurion Devastator, double Deathwing Knight, double Black Knights. Sick. Cool list. It's also a really threat overload, right? Because you have to deal with these Black Knights, both of which can Armor of Contempt because you have captains in them, both of which can squad tactics to get away from you. Then you also have to kill like 2 Deathwing Knight squads and 2 Centurion Devastator squads. You could probably kill like any 2 of those in one turn, and all the rest of it gets to shoot you every turn. Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool list right there. All right, what else do we want to look at, chat? Saw some people looking for Tyranids. We can spend a little bit more time with orcs before we move off of them. If you have a request, go ahead and throw it in there. Squigosaur, Beast Boss with Head Wamp is Kill Choppa. So the Beast Boss Squigosaur, yeah, is the one that actually needs Head Wamp as Kill Choppa, because the foot beast bosses get devastating wounds innately, but these guys actually need it. Mozrog Scragbad, so we got the double big bosses, 2 Knobs and Smashes Squigs, 2 Beast Naga Boys, Gretchen, double kill rig. Let's go, dude. We're back to 9th edition orcs. Oh my god, it's been so long since we've seen the big chariot on the table. That's sick. Double kill rig, double commandos, double Squidcock Boys, Storm Boys. This is just a 9th edition orc list. This is straight up. The only difference is that it has the Mozrog, basically. But you used to see like triple Knobs and Skasha Squigs, the Beast Boss and the Squigosaur with all of the like defensive upgrades, and then the double kill rigs with the Beast Naga Boys inside. It was 2 to 3 kill rigs plus like 2 or 3 commando units. This is just straight up a 9th edition orc list. I love it. What a blast from the past that one is. How much you want to bet that guy just like rolled out of bed and he was like, all right, I'm going to a GT. What's painted? Oh, my list from a year ago. All right, let's go. Let's just windmill slam. And then rocked it out to X and 1. Look at these scores too, dude. Orcs are so good at scoring. 3 perfect hundreds. Fuck me, dude. Oh my god. GT Rat had a Stompa and an Orion. The Stompa placed 3rd. Which one was that? H4H? Grat stick. Smash a knob. It's just a regular ass mech. Give that +1 to hit. The superior +1 to hit from over Space Marines, by the way. The Orc mech is better than a Tech Marine at supporting vehicles. What's up, girl? How you doing, Inky? You want to talk about orcs with me? Are you on camera? Oh my god. What did you just... Oh, she leaned so far in. Oh no. I feel so bad. I hope nobody saw that. I'm sorry, Katie. You wanna come visit? Not really. She's feeling fragile now. That's fair. Kind of sad that Chaos Space Marine's more gunline than melee. I mean, Chaos Space Marine's always been kind of middle of the road, right? They oscillate between being like shooting or being melee oriented or being combined arms. And right now, honestly, I still think that they're pretty solid in melee because a lot of their units are good, like both at close range and long range. Not Forge Fiends, obviously. The canopies. I'm sorry, chat. I'm sorry, Inky. She's slinking away right now. She's like, fuck you, dude. You suck. I'm going to live with your mom. But I mean, like basically every list has Abaddon and Terminators for the late game, right? Because they just melee so hard. Like they're good at shooting. They're fine at shooting, I guess. I wouldn't say they're great, but they're fine at shooting. And then they just like close out the late game because Abaddon just runs the table after you've killed everything that can kill him. Which I think is fine. Like Chaos Space Marines being the middle of the road faction kind of fits the theme. And I think right now, having the faction be basically what is kind of just like Dark Mechanicus with less words is kind of interesting. Because you're all in on Forge Fiends and you're all in on Obliterators and all of the like mutated demon stuff. And I think that's kind of cool, actually. Those are that in my opinion, those are the coolest parts of Chaos Space Marines, personally. I don't love the Accursed Cultist stuff, like the mutant guys. That's like kind of whatever. But the big Dark Mechanicus stuff is cool, and I'm really glad that that's like really meta right now. All right, we're looking at a Stompa. Is this the one? There it is. 800 points, one Stompa. It's double trucks, single Squig Hog, triple Storm Boys, double Gretchen. So there's still a lot of stuff on the ground, plus double Beast Nanga Boys, and a big boys squad? Damn, all right. And then I'm back following a Stompa around. So this is less of a Stompa list and more of an Orc list that just decided to like trade 60 boys for one Stompa. Which is honestly probably fine. I think a lot of times you get to the point where, you know, it's basically like all the other lists we've talked about, where you like put this Stompa in your army and you put it on the table, and then you put like all the trucks and the Squig Hogs there, and then that stuff runs to the middle, and your opponent's like, well, that's gonna charge me, so I should shoot it. And that means the Stompa just gets there. And if they don't shoot it, they just get murdered by the Stompa. Or they get murdered by if they don't shoot the trucks and they shoot the Stompa, maybe they kill it. It still disembarks 20 dudes, and then the trucks disembark and charge you anyway, and you get locked in your deployment zone for the rest of the game. Kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So I can definitely see it working. Just like hyper aggression. It's really interesting. Are Adeptus Sororitas useless right now? Well, we literally just looked at an X and 1 Adeptus Sororitas list, chat. If you scroll back like 20 minutes, you'll see some Adeptus Sororitas doing well. All right, I think that's enough orcs for today. Let's talk about some Tyranids. We had some people asking for Tyranids, so let's dive in. No undefeated Tyranids today, but we did have some X and 1s. This is from Abyss Supernova. Sebastian Besner playing double Tyrant. Let's go, dude. Oh, this list rocks. This guy fucks. Hive Tyrant with Adaptive Biology plus Swarm Lord. Double Barb Tyraduel. So you could be like, all right, I'm putting the Hive Tyrants on the line. Are you going to kill them? And your opponent's like, maybe. And you're like, all right. You're not shooting these 2 Barb Tyraduels, my dude. And your opponent's like, you're right, I guess. That is one thing Tyranids are good at. They can really threat overload with the best of them. Triple Biovore for scoring, 1 Lictor, 1 Maliceptor. Wow, there's also a Maliceptor. Oh my god. The forward deploy in this list. Big unit of Zoanthropes to the back line. Double Von Ryan's Leapers. I don't know about Von Ryan's Leapers, chat. Has anybody played Von Ryan's Leapers and liked them? I just can't imagine them being better than a Lictor. They have more attacks, but less strength and damage, and AP. They don't have They don't have lone operatives. So they just get shot at. And I guess they're like wider, so they're better for screening. But I think that's the only benefit that they have, in my opinion. And they're better at clearing infantry. I guess if you're like trying to fight Gene Stealer cult or something? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the Von Ryan Sleepers. I haven't had much luck with them. Yeah. I didn't even assemble mine. Mine are still in the box. Maelstrom Gaming loves them? I'm just not sure what they do that Elector doesn't also do, and also is unshootable. I think I feel like I would like them after the Lictor. Like if I've already had, if I already have 2 or 3 Lictors, then I start putting Von Ryan Sleepers in my army. And then you can really play like Alpha Strike Tyranids, where you're just like, I'm on the line, infiltrating 500 points in your face. Let's go. His non-Biovore list ran Von Ryan Sleepers and Raveners. Raveners are legit sweet. But Raveners do something that Lictors don't do. I just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm analyzing them, but it just feels like they fill exactly the same role as a Ravener, or as a Lictor, excuse me. They just are slightly different. But Raveners are like, they're deep striking. They're like way higher attack volume, right? They attack way more times than Von Ryan Sleepers. They just don't forward deploy, but they bounce around the table. Boop, boop, boop. And they have a gun. Raveners are nuts. I should play Realm Runner Raveners. Oh, this one has Raveners. 75 points. How is that model 25 points a model? It just feels like such a steal. I bet it's not as good as my mind is making it out to be, but it seems so strong. I did play Barbgans for the first time the other day on Saturday. I did play a tournament on Saturday, by the way, chat. And I played Barbgans for the first time, and that unit is a little torqued. They're a little silly. Just the ability to like 1v1 me, bro, like trade with any 10-man unit in the game, essentially, is like kind of nuts. Where they just rock out to like 10 anything, 10 guardsmen, 10 acolyte hybrids, 10 whatever, and they just trade like double their points, just one shot it, and then call it a day. Is crazy. And then also they slow people down too, which is also good. Well, I'm glad we looked at that list, because that list is cool AF. I should also probably try Barbed Pyro Duels. I have 2. It's a lot of things in Tyranids I haven't played yet. I haven't actually played Harry Dan since the rules came out. All-Stars Heat 4. This is 50 players. Nathan Roberts went 4-1 with Tyranids. Hive Tyrant, Nero Tyrant, Old One-Eye, Double Biovore, Carnifexes. Oh, this is just the list from WTC, right? And Pyrovore, Trigon, Tyrannifex, yeah. This is Sean Naden's list from WTC, if I remember correctly. Which is a good list. Pretty cool. Very, like, diverse. Not a lot of, like, singleton threats. Which I appreciate. The Trigon's underrated, I think. But this thing is super good. Super duper good. Rapid ingressing to Trigon is, like, maybe the best feeling in the entire game. Like how new Biovores look? Yeah. And it sounds like they may do the same thing as they do now, which is kind of nuts. Although I have to imagine that they stop scoring. Like, we could probably make that happen. Got an Ultramarines at X1-1. Phobos Librarian, Marnius Calgar, Primaris Captain, Primaris Librarian with Bolter Discipline. Oh, are we doing the Librarian on the Desolation Squad? I guess it helps against other Desolators, right? Because they're like Ignore Cover AP1 and AP2. So you can actually benefit from the 4+ Invulnerable. So I guess that's fair. Assault Intercessors, Heavy Intercessors, the Big Desolator Squad, 1 Hellblaster, double Inceptor, double Infiltrator, Calidus. Feels like the backhand punch is a little bit awkward. I guess you could assign Marnius Calgar to the Assault Intercessors, right? Does he go there? Is that where he goes? Is that allowed? Marnius, what are you attached to? I've only ever seen him in Blade Guard and Aggressors, because you usually want to like wombo combo out as hard as you can go, but really, the delivery system is just him, because his melee output's good, so you don't really need the output of the entire Aggressor squad, but the ability, just like baked in Advance and Charge and Aggressors is good. without having to proc Devastator Doctrine for it. Here he is.
T-Reddit confirmed base size for Biovol went up.
T-Reddit confirmed. I don't know what that means. It definitely, it seems like it went up, but the picture next to the Termagants looked so small. And those pictures are photoshopped, so it might have just been improperly scaled, but who knows, honestly. Marius Cargo is in everything. Holy shit. You could put him in the Heavy Intercessor squad. Okay. I didn't know that. Look at this. Infernus squads, Sternguard veteran squads, Assault Intercessors. What? This guy breaks all of the attachment conventions for every other Space Marine character. That's just Ultramarine privilege right there. Like, oh, our Chapter Master goes in any unit. Your Chapter Master is stuck going into tactical squads and Sternguard veterans. Our Chapter Master can go into anything he wants, besides like Devastators and I don't know. I guess Hellblasters. Yeah. It went to 90 from 80. Oh, that's unfortunate. That's an annoying change. Why do that? Brennan, thanks for the kind words, man. $90mm. What other bases are 90mm? Because like, what is an armature base? It's 100, right? Do they really have 80, 90, and 100? I didn't even know that. We're in the Games Workshop website here. Look at you can't even buy any of this stuff. You can't attach to a Dreadnought yet. Yeah, so armatures are on 100mm. What is on a 90mm base? $90mm oval? It's not an oval, right? That'd be wild. No. I have no idea. Uploaded characters can go into more units when the Codex comes out. Yeah, I think the weird part about the Space Marine one is that the Space Marine Codex is so large that it gets kind of weird. After thinking about it, like I was a little annoyed that they really like doggedly kept to the attachment rules that they sort of made up in their heads, right? Where they're like, armor only attaches to like power armor units, so you can't cross the streams. And like basically nothing goes into heavy weapon squads. And I was like, oh, that's annoying. I wish they would let you mix and match anything. But then I was like, well, if you could Rites of Battle a Desolation squad, like it's really pretty broken. So I'm glad that there's like some they stop it at some point. For Space Marines specifically, I think that because the faction's so wide, you can't just like unlock them because the potential combos get very silly. For other factions, I think it's better. Like why can't, Eldar Farseers attach to a Dire Avenger unit? Like nobody knows. That stuff's kind of weird. But for Space Marines specifically, because they have so many potential combos, I think it's okay. Best Tyranid color scheme? Green and white. No bias. No bias at all. We were just talking about Tyranids for a second, chat, and then we got sidetracked by Ultramarines. Looking for Tyranid lists. Or I did. I got sidetracked by Ultramarines. Because I'm like a magpie. Are we going to get power levels in the NIDS book? No. There are no power levels in 40k anymore. If you are hoping for power levels, then I have bad news for you. Those are a 9th edition thing. And they're gone now. Good riddance. Just use points. Alright. Did we look at all? Is it really all of the X1 Tyranids? Look at this one. I thought there were more. There's too much Aeldar. Get all this Aeldar out of my game. God damn it. Just a little bit of Chaos Demons. Some Chaos Demons. Oh, that's a Goff's list. We already looked at that one. A bit of Chaos Demons hype. High Fleet Tortellini. I like that one. If Norn Assimilator is 300 points, is it good? It's probably playable at 300. I think it's good. Sub 300, it's good. Assuming that it's like good in melee. I would say 300, it's like probably kind of mediocre. 350 is when it gets like it's probably a no for me, dog. I think you're gonna run into a problem that it's like a big melee oriented, like short range melee oriented monster, which means it's just like has every bad sort of archetype. But I think you buy them basically for their threat and their survivability, and you can't overpay for that because those are things that like your points per wound is so important at that point that if it's too expensive, it's not that great. But that's also assuming that we don't see that many new abilities, because it could be that they're, you know, they could advance and charge us on their data sheet or something crazy, and then I think suddenly immediately they're good. People are expecting way more out of the Codex than will actually drop. I think that's probably the case. You still run it with a Tyrant because you want the free CP? Well, I mean, that's like every Tyranid list, right? Assuming that the stratagems are useful and they don't have other ways to generate command points from, enhancements and stuff, I think that you're going to be hard-pressed to build a Tyranid list that doesn't revolve around a Hive Tyrant. But there's sort of a natural synergy between a Hive Tyrant and a big monster, which is that you can play more aggressively with the Hive Tyrant if it has like profiles with it. And what I mean by that is that if your opponent has anti-tank, right, and you have a Norn Emissary or a Norn Assimilator in the Inky's back. In the like middle of your, oh no, she's gone again. Cool. And you have like a Norn unit in the middle of the table, and you have a Hive Tyrant behind it. Is your opponent going to shoot the Hive Tyrant to reduce the efficiency of the Norn unit, or are they just going to shoot at the Norn unit because they have to kill it first? Otherwise, it's going to charge them. And if you have like infantry in front of the Hive Tyrant, then they're going to shoot their little guns at the infantry, and they're going to shoot their big guns at the Hive Tyrant, and then you're going to lose both. But if they only have, if they have a 50-50 split of big guns and little guns, they have to pick one thing to concentrate their fire on, because half of those profiles are going to be ineffective anyway. So running a bunch of monsters lets you play more aggressively with your characters, with your tyrants, and I think that's like kind of an unspoken benefit of running a bunch of those big monsters. And that was like the Tyranid list that we looked at earlier, which was this one. Oop, and I opened it and then I closed it again. Basically used as that, right? Because it has 2 Hive Tyrants. There's no Tyrant Guard for these, by the way. They're just chilling. But like, you have 2 T10 4+ save Hive Tyrants. Are you going to shoot them, or are you going to shoot the Barbed Tyrodules, or are you going to shoot the Maliceptor? Because you have to choose one, and all of them can do damage to you. So you're going to shoot the Barbed Tyrodules that are like worth way more points and also do way more damage at range, or are you going to shoot the late game threats? And you're probably going to shoot the Barbed Tyrodules, and the Hive Tyrants just get to play in the Sprinkler for a while. Assume 500 points for a Tyrant plus a Norn Emissary. Yeah, I think the question isn't like how much is 1 Norn Emissary. I think the question is how much is 2 to 3 Norn Emissaries. Probably 2, because I think what happens is that there's a situation where they either replace like zoanthropes, or they replace maleceptors, because they basically fill the same role as maleceptors. They're not entirely different because there's a synergy between them, because once both of them are on an objective, it's like basically unassailable, because you're charging into them, you have to charge into the Feel No Pains and the -1 from the maleceptor. But I think that you're probably, if you have one of them, it's probably just going to get focus fired down, but if you have like two, I think your front line's strong enough that it's tough to kill it before it gets to, like, steal objectives and do its thing. Advance and charge confirmed for melee warriors and Vanguard Onslaught. Is it confirmed, or is it just... I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to work, but I'm not 100%. I hope that they're efficient, but I do think that they probably need... What is the points cost of a melee warrior right now? Because I think they do probably still need a... Yeah, they're 30 points a model. They probably do still need a points cost reduction. I actually wouldn't be too surprised if, like, Raveners are Vanguard invaders. And if that's the case, then I think they just, like, are fucking insane. Because they then Deep Strike, have a higher base movement, and advance and charge, and that would be nuts. I don't know that, though, and there's a pretty reasonable chance that they don't end up like that. But, like, it's a bit of a sad comparison between the two. Because melee warriors don't really get any benefits, but they're just more expensive. They get the reroll once they hit, I guess. That's the only benefit. And extra AP? They're AP 2 instead of 1? But they pay 5 extra points and lose a gun and lose, like, range and movement and attacks and deep strike and special abilities. Yeah, that's the implication. The question is whether or not there's, like, you can take melee warriors in the Vanguard and Onslaught task force, because there is the potential that some units get restricted out of those detachments. And then the other question is whether or not there's, like, a rider on who gets Vanguard Invader. Like, if you get Vanguard Invader on a Tyranid Prime that's not attached to a unit, suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Ninth edition range warriors were 95 points each. 95 points each. Basically. 95 points apiece. All right. I think that was all of the Tyranids that we found, chat. There was some Tau Empire action. I know that we had sort of glossed over, which is kind of fun. I went to click on these Chaos Demons. I don't think I took a look at them. I definitely looked at them, but I didn't read it. Valleycore, Bloodthirster, Kairos Fate Weaver, Lord of Change with Everstave, another Lord of Change. Whoa! Triple birds plus Changeling, double Nurglings, Blood Crushers again, Flamers, Fleshhounds again. I think that Blood Crushers are probably the sleeper out of Chaos Demons, because I've been seeing more and more Chaos Demons go X1 or undefeated with mass Blood Crushers in their army. And I think especially if you're rocking the Khorne stuff, like, you already have internal synergy with the Blood Crushers themselves, and they also give you mortal wound output that you don't necessarily have in Demons anymore. Where's that data sheet? Yeah, so they're like high attack volume. They attack 6 times a piece, so they're pretty solid at, like, infantry clear. You can get +1 to hit from the Bloodthirster, so they go to 2+ weapon skill, 2 and 3+ weapon skill, which is pretty solid. And then each of them averages a mortal wound on the charge. So they'll probably kill, like, most vehicles on the charge if they plow it for, like, 6 mortal wounds or whatever. And their base move 10, you can start them on the table in Shadow of Chaos and from Valleycore, and then they can just, like, run out, and you can advance and charge them. So they threaten the board turn 1, which a lot of Demons don't do. The downside is mounted, but it is what it is. Can't all be winners. Need to see if Votan actually did anything. I doubt that they did. We looked at these Tyranids. Some Black Templars at 3 and 2. I know somebody was talking about Black Templars earlier. Tannhauser's Bones on a Terminator Chaplain. One character. All right. Fair enough. Primaris Crusaders. This is a weird format, by the way. What is this? Bizarre. A Ballistus Dreadnought, a Gladiator Lancer, a Desolation Squad, one Inceptor. Is this in GTF? No, Righteous Crusaders. Wow, okay. Take Desolators and Righteous Crusaders. I guess they're good enough anyway. Who needs the synergies? Have a bad feeling Zoanthropes are going to get nerfed? I don't... Does anything in Tyranids get nerfed? Doesn't feel like it will. Like I think they should hit Biovores probably. Biovores make the game just so boring. If they hit Biovores and then like give them Codex stuff that's better, then that's fine. But Biovores are like nuts. I don't think anything else in Tyranids is actually like sort of that insane. Zoanthropes are very good into infantry matchups, but like the faction's so bad at armor cracking that like Zoanthropes are required basically to be able to like keep up. But the problem is that they're like inconsistent as hell. The number of times over the last couple of weeks playing Tyranids that I've rocked out 6 Zoanthropes and just bounced entirely off a vehicle is like more often than not. And it's just that 6 last cannons is good, but 6 last cannons is not good enough. You need to get 2 or 3 units of Zoanthropes on the target to actually kill it, and it's just like the amount of effort required is insane. Is it Biovores or just the mines? I mean, the mines come from the Biovores, so Spore mines themselves are not broken because the Spore mine datasheet is hot garbage. You would never purchase a Spore mine with points, not for 10 points a model. But the Biovore's ability to put Spore mines anywhere you want at any time is crazy good. If Biovores went back to their previous points cost of like 35 or 40, 45 points, I think that they were when they launched, and just got and couldn't score anymore, I think they'd still be playable. Honestly, like the Biovore indirect fire is actually not that bad. It's sort of gravy on top, but also the ability to spontaneously generate models is still very good. It's just not 65 points good, but it's maybe 40 points good. Maliceptor and Haruspex could get a points increase. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how far down they want to reach, right? Because, like, you know, Tyranids are like, what? They're like top 8 on a good day in terms of armies. Like, you gonna nerf that far down? Because if you hit Tyranids and you don't hit, like, Custodes and Deathwatch and Necrons and, like, all these other factions that are, like, at the same level or better, I don't know. You nerf like half of the game. Better question is Psychophage, Toxic and Turbogon getting buffed. Honestly, I have a sneaking suspicion. If you're looking for units to get buffed that aren't in like a bottom 5 codex, I don't think I would expect that. Sometimes they do that, but much more often you just see nerfs instead of buffs. It's very rare you see stuff get nerfed. Or get buffed in factions that don't aren't just losing every game. Went 2-1 with the Herod in an RTT last weekend. Good fun. Good. That's awesome to hear. I'm gonna have to pull Harry Dan back out. I think. I think it's time. Is there value to buy another Space Marine half of Leviathan? Honestly, not really. The Space Marine half of Leviathan's like really bad from a competitive standpoint. Like Ballistus Dreadnoughts and Infernus squads, like. Not particularly meta picks. Would love for the Turbogon list to be playable again. I have a hot take, chat, and it's that I think the Turbogon list should go the way of the Dodo forever. Just axe the Turbogon list. I never want to see it again. It's so boring. I never had less fun winning games of 40k than in 9th edition with the Turbogon list. The High Fleet Leviathan, like 60 Gaunts, Turbogon, respawning people all day. The Endless Horde sort of version. It was like when you lost, it was because somebody spiked dice and one-shot the Termagant unit. If you won, it was because they couldn't spike dice and one-shot the Termagant unit and they had no way to win. And it was just like, cool. Here I am, just waiting around for the round to be over. Oof. Ugh. No good. Gene Stealers might go down. It sounds like Gene Stealers are getting a lot of stuff, a lot of support in the new Codex, so I wouldn't expect any change for Gene Stealers. Also, Gene Stealers aren't even that bad. I think Gene Stealers are like fringe playable. I just don't think that they're like super good. The problem with Gene Stealers is their threat range, like, honestly. Their threat range and blast, because you always have to take... You want to take big units of them, and if you're taking Broodlords, of course. And blast just, like, wipes them. Like, indirect fire blast just kills the whole unit immediately. And that's unfortunate, but if you have an extended threat range and potentially some more support out of, like, Vanguard Onslaught, then I think that they're fine without a points cut. Because they're not that expensive. And I think playing 5ers of Gene Stealers is still fine, too. Because they still get rerolls. Like, they'll pick up, like, 5 Gene Stealers will pick up, 5 Marines on an objective, no problem. And for 80 points, it's pretty solid. Fighter, thanks for the kind words about the mustache. I was trying a new thing. I'm glad people noticed. I wasn't even sure if it was, like, really coming in that well. But I was like, I'm gonna grow my mustache out and see what happens. And a lot of people commented on it this last week, which feels good. So I appreciate that, guys. Am I going to Nova? I decided not to. No. It was up in the air for a while. I was gonna have a booth at Nova actually, but they didn't have space, and they did have space, and they didn't have space, so we didn't end up actually scheduling it. And it's because, so it's a weird. Came to this realization over Adepticon. I think it's a weird place for me to be in because covering events, and this is maybe idiosyncratic, but it's because of the way content creation works. At least as a one-man show, I guess. Covering events is infinitely harder if I'm at the event, which is weird. But if I'm physically there, I don't have all of my equipment, so I can't edit videos, and I can't get, like, easy, or up-to-date updates when things happen. So, tomorrow is going to be the big keynote, right? If I was in the hall watching the keynote presentation, then I wouldn't then be able to make content about it. But if I'm sitting at home, then I can. And so it's a tough place to be in, and I think it's maybe just like a workflow thing that I have to maybe work out. But big events are very difficult for me right now, and it is what it is. Death Guard Contagion will get +1 to wound. Oh, that'd be so good, dude. Hopefully Mephitic Blighthollow is going to rework if that's the case, but... Ooh. That'd be nuts strong. I mean, that would make, like, Death Guard from being very defensively oriented to being extremely offensively oriented. Just like, all right, boys, we're going in. If we got to get a unit up there to contagion them, and then we'll shoot them to death with 1 billion guns. Which seems pretty good. What about a second Tyranid part of the Leviathan box? The Tyranid part, I think, of the Leviathan box is better, I think. I still don't... There's, like, the second Barbgut unit and the second Termagant unit are both useful. The Von Ryan Sleepers are, like, whatever. And the Psychophage, you probably won't take 2 Psychophages. Like, 0 to 1 Psychophage and Neuro Tyrant is kind of where you're at. So there's a lot less useful stuff in the second half of the Leviathan box, but the first half is solid. Hire a college freshman to be my content slave. I wish that I made enough on this platform to be able to hire people. That would be cool. And it might be just like something I have to do, but I don't know. I also, I'm like, like being beholden to someone else is like always kind of weird for me. So like if I have a person that I've hired and I need to like provide them with a workflow constantly, then I feel a lot more pressure. And I think that if I'm at a point where I feel like I'm pressured to do stuff, then I think that the quality of the content that I make goes down. How do I think they're going to nerf Eldar in September? I think I have a sneaking suspicion that it won't be enough. We'll see. I mean, I'm hoping I'm hoping that like they just transform a bunch of stuff, right? Where it's just like, guys, we took devastating wounds off everything, and like a bunch of data sheets are different now or whatever. I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to be like, Wraith Knights are 500 points, and the Fire Prism is 250, and I think we're fixed now. And you'll just be like, what? Didn't do anything. What are you talking about? Like, they just won't take Fire Prisms anymore. People already aren't doing that. And I hope that that's not what's going to happen, but I think that there's definitely a universe where they just under-nerf really hard. The hope is that they, like, Wraith Knights do like 20% of the damage that they do currently. Phantasm gets like nuked from orbit, and that a bunch of the other tanks and stuff get toned down. But we'll see. Will the Screamer Killer go down in points? I don't believe that we'll see the Screamer Killer go down in points. I don't think Tyranids are going to get buffs in the data slate update, chat. If you're expecting Tyranid buffs, I have bad news for you. I think if anything, we'll see a Biofor nerf and then Tyranids will remain unchanged. I wouldn't expect people to get, like, for them to dig super deep into the failed manual and start tinkering with factions across the entire game. Better buy would be the new Space Marine box. The Vanguard one? It's actually the old Space Marine box. That's, let's see. Is it still on the front page? Yeah, this one. This is a pretty good buy. If you're just looking for a starting place for Space Marines, this one's relatively solid. Because you're going to use most of it. Eliminators are good. Suppressors are fine. Infiltrators are in like every single list ever. The Lieutenant's not that great. He's like super memey, but he's not very good. But the rest of the list is... The rest of this box is really solid. You get yourself like a Gladiator Lancer and a couple Inceptor units and like a Phobos Librarian, and you have like an actual army. You could probably build like 1,000 points out of that. Do I think swapping the cost of Fire and Fate and Phantasm would work? No. Yeah, I think both of them would be too strong if you did that. Still, I think Phantasm just needs a bottom-up rework. Like, I think that probably the easiest change that they could make, if they wanted to like limit the amount of work that they had to do, I think that there's a universe where they just make it once per game, which they used to do all the time to stratagems. That was constant. Every time a stratagem was too strong, they were just like once per game. Like, every Adeptus Custodi stratagem got that at one point. Or they limit it to infantry and mounted or something, rather than everything. One of those two things is probably what's going to happen if I had to put money on it. But I don't think buffing Fire and Fate is the answer. Especially because Fire and Fate has more utility than just moving out of line of sight. Phantasm's basically, it's most of the time defensive, but Fire and Fate you can use to score and you can use to like get secondaries, and it has a lot more potential on your turn. Yeah, Dark Angel's Combat Patrol is pretty good. The Redemptor Dreadnought's pretty solid, for sure. Fate dice being modified instead of unmodified would be huge. Yeah, I agree with that too. I do think that there's like... I think that the fact the fate dice being unable to trigger like things that require modified rolls. So like you wouldn't be able to use it on Overwatch. You wouldn't be able to use it on Devastating Wounds. That would be big, but I don't know if it would be big enough, because part of the problem is that because they like re-roll so many times, you can just like riverboat gamble into Devastating Woundsing people. And most of the time that you see a Wraith Knight like nowadays, like one shot 1,000 points off the table, it's because they just rolled a bunch of sixes. It's not because they like carefully, modified their fate dice. It's like maybe one of their attacks comes from fate dice, and then they just re-roll into sixes with their other dice. And suddenly, they're shooting 6 times or whatever with their guns, and they roll 2 sixes and fate dice a third, and only 30% of that comes actually from fate dice. The other ones just come from the fact that their gun has devastating wounds. And I think it should be probably a rule of thumb that outside of very specific circumstances like railguns, where railguns are like Thundercore or harpoons, where the devastating wounds is like part of the design of the weapon. Weapons that do more than like 3 damage probably should not have devastating wounds. And weapons that shoot multiple times should have very, very limited access to devastating wounds. I think that's probably the heart of the issue. It's that they and I think I talked about this on stream before. They took devastating wounds, everything that had a spall effect where it would split its attack into multiple damage after if it rolled a 6 to wound, and anything that had a sniper effect that did mortal wounds in addition to damage on 6s to wound. They just copy pasted devastating wounds on all that stuff, and they didn't really consider like how having a 2d6 devastating wound weapon would work.
Farseer ability must change to once per game. ATM they practically have 30 guaranteed 6 each game minimum.
Yeah, maybe that's a direction to go into. The Farseer best ability is definitely too strong. It could be once per battle round instead of once per turn. That would be fine. Honestly, I think part of the issue is that when they nerfed Eldar the first time, they nerfed their ability to spend fate dice, but they didn't nerf their ability to gain fate dice. So they didn't actually change like their fate dice economy. They made it better, basically, because instead of spending all your fate dice in the first turn and one-shotting your opponent off the table, you spend your fate dice over the course of the entire game, and you gradually accrue value until it feels like you one-shot your opponent off the table. So they just like they made the games longer, but not very much better. And a fix to that could just be reducing the amount of fate dice you have. If the Farseer works every turn, but is only applying to 6 fate dice instead of whatever they roll, like 12 right now, then that's a pretty big deal. And plus, you give Guardians a new lease on life if you limit the access to fate dice too. Why does Games Workshop delay codexes across entire years? Welcome to the welcome to the Warhammer release cycle, where in order to sell more products, they slowly release codexes to generate hype around them. It's entirely a marketing thing, which is sort of a necessary evil. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. The scourge of the codex release cycle in 40k is not really like a new discussion, and it's almost every single problem with 40k can basically be focused down to the fact that the codex release cycle is toxic. But on the flip side, 40k would not be as big as it is now without the codex release cycle. So you have to take the good with the bad, right? Like 40k is huge and has a ton of people who play it, and that's great. The downside is it's like this monkey's paw, where it's like you have a miniature game that you can play in almost any city in the world. You can find people in almost every country who play, and you can play with them, and you probably can find tournaments too. Then the monkey's paw, like the finger curls, and it's like, but it has this toxic release cycle that's really broken because that fuels the marketing engine of the game to allow the community to grow that big. So you're like, well, it is what it is. Speaking of Combat Patrol, have I played any games of Combat Patrol? I have played a couple games of Combat Patrol. They were fine. I think that they go pretty quickly, and I do think some factions are just like sort of generically better at Combat Patrol than others. It's not quite as an interesting format as I thought it would be, and it's pretty dicey. I think more so than previous versions of Combat Patrol because you can't build your own army. So like if somebody's Space Marine unit gets into an Imperial Guard army, you're just like, well, guess I die. So if they like roll their charge, you can't take any combat units in most of the like shooty combat patrols. So you're like, well, rip. So it's fine. It's a fine starter format, but I don't think it's as interesting as I thought it would be. Downside is the first codex releases each expansion usually get the short stick in terms of balance and longevity. Inky's over here. She's trying to get on stream, by the way. Hey, kitty. You want to come visit? Come on up. Come on. Maybe. Come here. Yeah, here you come. Wow. Oh, there she is. It's a kitty. You want to hang out? Maybe. Yeah, she does. Nope, she doesn't. Just kidding. Inky looks long-haired. How do I keep the cat hair off while painting or building? It's a good question, actually. She doesn't really... I guess I don't have many, like hair adhering surfaces around my area here. So, I don't get a lot of hair around my desk. She does have right next to the camera. I could tilt the camera and you could kind of see. This is her cat tree. This is why she always hangs out sort of next to me. And that's where her hair goes. It all gets stuck on there. You can kind of see it. Some of it's kind of hanging out. Plus, we brush all the time. She loves brushing. Some cats really hate being groomed, but Inky is the opposite. Inky complains to me if I go too long. If I go like more than 3 hours without giving her a comb, she gets super mad. So she gets brushed constantly. So that's where a lot of her hair goes to. It evacuates to my upper lip. Indeed, that's where this came from. This wasn't my own hard work. This was Inky just giving me kisses. Just giving me the cutest kisses. Here she is. Look at this cute cat. What a cutie pie. How many points is the Northern Emissary? Not sure yet. We'll have to find out. Probably, if I had to guess, 285. If I was to put prices right on it. Knowing what I do now, there could be more abilities that it has that we don't know. And it could be way better statted than we think, but... Aw. Oh, she's giving me kisses. What a spoiled cat this is. I won't move the camera. Is Combat Patrol good for new players? I think so. Like, limiting the amount of... Like, army building in 40k is so daunting. Limiting the amount of, like, options that you have to consider is really good. I think it was well constructed as a beginner product for sure. What would Inky's stat lines and abilities be in game? She'd have like a death roll where she does like a million mortal wounds to everything around, because she does this like floop. Whenever she gets to a place where she wants to sit, she just like turns sideways immediately. And then she'd have stealth, and I don't know. Certainly not lone operative because she's so needy. Can we look at the Dark Ages Combat Patrol? Yeah, for sure. The only not super useful include in this is probably the Chaplain. Primaris Chaplain's kind of bad. Not like terrible, but he's just not very useful. But the Redemptor Dreadnought's amazing. Inceptors are like they're like fighting for like one of the best units in the game. And Intercessors are fine. I wouldn't say Intercessors are good, but they're like solidly okay. Any tips for choosing an army for the first time? What is more important army gameplay or looks? I would say it's a combination of the two. If I were to start an army for the first time ever, I would make a mental list or a physical list, whichever one you want to do, of all of the armies in the game that you think look cool. So because Warhammer 40k is like such a time commitment, you have to get all the models together, build your list, assemble everything, paint everything, learn how it plays. Like, it's so much of a commitment. If you don't like looking at the stuff you're putting together or painting, you're gonna burn out immediately. You're just not gonna enjoy it. So aesthetics is like number one in my opinion. Take the armies that you like the look of and you think you like would enjoy putting together and painting, and from there look at their gameplay and decide what fits with the stuff that you like in games. So if you like to play fast stuff, if you like to play tanky stuff, if you like to play really like finesse oriented, where like it's a real like gameplay, challenge that you're trying to solve. From there, I would use that to narrow down your selection to pick an army that you like. But yeah, I do think aesthetics are so important because, like, at the end of the day, miniatures, the reason you're playing a miniature game and not a video game or a board game is that the aesthetics of a miniature game are so much nicer than a different medium. Gargoyles will likely get an advanced in charge of Vanguard Onslaught. Is Gargoyle spam a viable tactic? I don't know if Gargoyle spam is a viable tactic, but like, honestly, you don't even need to charge people with Gargoyles. That's why Gargoyles are so freaking good, dude. Like, they basically automatically charge 6 inches because they have Fire and Fade. And you don't need to actually roll the charge or have a target. So like, the only situation in which that's really useful is if you're trying to long bomb them farther than they could normally move with their 6-inch move, or you don't have anything to shoot at and you don't have a target. So I think Gargoyles are just great as it is. Like, I don't know if I would leave home with the Tyranid list without 20 Gargoyles in it. And I don't know if necessarily advancing and charging changes that. It's certainly another tool in the toolbox. If your opponent's hiding away from you, and you're like, oh, you can't shoot me, so you can't double move, and you're just like, well, I'll charge you anyway. That's fine. But Gargoyles will just die on the swing. So it's not quite as exciting. Gameplay is always changing? Yeah, well, specific gameplay is always changing, but the broad strokes don't change, right? Like, Death Guard are, from a top-down perspective, right? Like, Death Guard are supposed to be slow and tanky. That in 10th edition, they're still slow and tanky. They just don't do it as well as they did in 9th edition. So it's not like, don't pay so much attention to like how powerful a thing is when you're first getting started, because it doesn't usually matter for you so much when you're first getting started. But the general concepts of playing the faction remain the same from edition to edition. It's just like the specifics of which units are good and exactly how strong that game plan is for that faction are different. And most factions you can like they can meet like sort of contort themselves a little bit to play slightly different factions or to answer the metagame. And that might be more so now that the new detachment system's out too. Well, although we just have to see what they look like. How viable does a winged tyrant become with advanced in charge from the Vanguard detachment? I think more so than it currently does. I'm still not sure that I rate one over the melee tyrant, but the ground tyrant. But I think that's at least interesting. The interesting question that I have is whether or not we're going to see offensive enhancements in any of these detachments. Because the one thing that the tyrants don't have going for them right now is like, they're like, well, we could get to melee. We're kind of tanky and we're sort of reasonably fast, but we'll never actually connect with anyone and actually kill them. If you have enhancement that's like +2 strength, AP, and damage when your opponent's battle shocked or something, you're just like, oh, all right, okay. Suddenly we're cooking with gas. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see. Then I think melee tyrants like edge things out, but. They definitely need advanced in charge on the winged one to be able to do anything, because right now they're just too slow. Drukari did change a lot, but I don't think that was intentional. That was probably a mistake from Mod Games Workshop's part. Yeah. Oopsies. Yeah, the other thing I think to keep in mind too while we're talking about new player stuff is I wouldn't pay so much attention to the starter material as well. Like, the combat patrols are a solid place to start, but if you're not playing combat patrol with anyone, it's like you get a little bit of added value over just buying kits separately, but not greatly. Like, sometimes you get 5 extra models, but a lot of times the models you get aren't like that amazing. So like, mostly buy what you like and buy what you like want to play. I wouldn't necessarily be like beholden to starting with a combat patrol and buying and building up from there too. How much would I pay for the amazing Crusher Stampede enhancement? That feels like a 10-pointer. Maybe 15. That feels like a points filler more than anything. Like, most of the detachments have one enhancement that's like basically free, and that's so that when you have weird, like, odd numbers of points left in your army, you can fill them up. That's what that one feels like to me. I think there's like there's a universe where you put it on like a Turvagon and you're trying to like play this like board control Turvagon build, but other than that, like, what monster character do you want +3 OC on? It's like maybe fine on a Hive Tyrant, I guess, but maybe if like they have bonuses for Tyrant Guard or something, and you can play like a big Tyrant Guard plus like the Hive Tyrant brick, kind of cool. Chad, I want Maw Claws of Thyrax back. Reaper of Obliterax. People started to come around to my point of view towards the end of the edition, but Reaper of Obliterax was overrated as hell. The Maw Claws of Thyrax, that was where it was at, and that was always where it was at. And everyone was like, oh, I ignore phase caps. What a time to be alive. You do damage in like 5 out of the 6 phases of the game. Who cares about ignoring phase caps? Roll like 9 attacks and do 27 damage. 9 attacks with full rerolls at like AP 4. What? Why would we need to do 3 mortal wounds? Yeah, as the Maw Claws of Thyrax were nuts, absolutely nuts. Unless you run Lash with Bone Sword plus Scything Talons on a Tyrant, you basically do nothing. Yeah, the Scything Talons on a Tyrant are like secret technology, though. Those things unironically do a ton of damage. Because the thing I always found with the Hive Tyrant was that once you get into melee late game, you never have a stratagem to use on your own turn, or you rarely do. So you almost always Adrenaline Surge the Hive Tyrant, so he criticals on 5s. And a lot of times you're like, I'll pay a CP to make him lethal against vehicles. I'll critical on 5s, and he goes in with 10 attacks, and he's like auto wounds like 4 of them, or like he perfectly adapts one into another one. He like auto wounds 5 times at AP 2, and then converts 1 or 2 of the other attacks. So he ends up converting with like over 50% of his swings. And the 10 attacks makes that possible. Plus it makes him kind of an infantry blender too. If he's like 10 attacks, hitting on 2s, exploding on 6s, he can kind of just like randomly blow people out. Yeah, I actually love the late game melee Tyrant. He's much punchier than people give him credit for. AP was wild in 9th edition. Yeah, I kind of liked it though. I don't know. It did probably push too far at some point when like every gun was AP 6 or whatever, but like I appreciated that the game became, especially in melee, became like more of a chess match and less of like just a roll dice fight. There's been so many fights in 10th edition where you're like, all right, the 2 units get stuck in, neither of us can fall back and operate, so we just stand here and like roll a billion attacks, do 1 damage, and then like they're all roll my attacks, I do 1 damage, and you're like, cool, this is fun and engaging gameplay. And as soon as somebody falls back, the other person just charges them again, so they just get to fight like extra times in a row. It's just, I don't know, it's not very exciting. Whereas like in 9th edition, like your fights were actually decisive. I don't know. People who play Termagants over multiple editions and play WYSIWYG, do they have just a shit ton of different Gaunt units lying around? I do. I have about... I don't know how many Termagants I have. I probably have about 120. But I have like 40 or... between 40 and 60 Devourer Termagants, and then I have like 80 Fleshborer Termagants. And you just like... yeah, I never like magnetized them. It was never worth the effort. And back in the day, they were cheap enough that you would just buy another unit, or you would just have them laying around. They used to come in the Battle Force boxes, and you would have so many of them. And you would just like, oh, I need a unit with Devourers this time. I'll just assemble them. I take double melee on the Hive Tyrant? Yeah, every time. Yeah, the gun is... the Hive Tyrant gun options are so bad. The Stranglethorn Cannon's okay if you're, like, teching for heavy melee matchups, but you never want the Hive Tyrant to be exposed until... It's always out of line of sight until the end of the game when you're, like, pushing for the win. And at that point, like, having one gunshot doesn't do anything. So... having 4 extra melee attacks on the turn that you really need the Hive Tyrant to pull its weight in melee is like way more impactful, is what I eventually found. The Venom Cannon, the Stranglethorn Cannon's only good into infantry matchups, and the Venom Cannon is just worthless, just so bad. Can we take a look at the Sisters Combat Patrol? Yeah, for sure. I think there was somebody. Oh, I just clicked on Morbin Ball like a dumbass. There was somebody in the Discord the other day who was like, who's talking about Venom cannons, and they were like, what is the point of a Venom cannon? It's like, it's not statted well into anything, and you're like, yeah, it's trying so hard to be mid range that it just fails really hard at it. Running the Venom Cannon, it's been dog dirt. Yeah. It tries to thread the needle of being jack of all trades, where it's like, well, it's random shot blast, so you could shoot 6 times against infantry. And it's high strength, so it's good against heavy infantry and light vehicles. And it's mid AP, so it's good against medium infantry. And it's like random, like it's like mediocre damage, so like you want to shoot it at a tank, so it could maybe do some damage, except that it's not high enough strength to wound a tank enough times that they don't save out of its crappy AP. It's not high enough volume that you ever actually want to like move the Tyrant out to shoot it at infantry. And it doesn't do enough damage to kill infantry that have a good enough save. So like there's no single target that it actually wants to attack. And if you expose the Hive Tyrant early to shoot it, your opponent's just gonna be like, oh, I could shoot your Hive Tyrant, and then they'll kill it. And you'll be like, great. I lost my free 5-up feel no pain for the rest of the game. So the Hive Tyrant, like, you end up just having this worse melee threat for the opportunity to maybe one day shoot a gun if your opponent doesn't shoot back at you. Oh yeah, this has Repentia in it. Yeah. So it's Archoflagellant Seraphim, the 1 Penitent Engine, and the Rhino. You probably get use out of the Rhino. The Battle Sister, you're like 0 to like 2 Battle Sister squads maybe in a Sisters list. So that's fine. Unfortunately, the Canoness is kind of like hot garbage, but you could just like probably tell people she's a Palatine, and I don't think anybody would look at you funny. So that's not too bad. The Repentia are just stone unplayable, in my opinion. So that's a loss. Then the Archoflagellants, like we just looked at, are pretty solid. Seraphim are always good, and the Penitent Engine's fine. I mean, I'd give this like a solid 7 out of 10. At least like the majority of it is playable. You're just not excited about this bit right here. Shard Gullet caused us to pay for the sins of the Venom Cannon. Shard Gullet was so garbage, though. It cost you like 2 CP to make Shard Gullet worth it, because you had to take Perfectly Adapted on top of it. And then you just had to hope your opponent didn't make every invulnerable save, which they always did. The Shard Gullet Hive Tyrant was like, it was good when it was a Battleship Hive Tyrant, and you could take the double guns, and then he would actually one-shot tanks and stuff. But Shard Gullet was like, aha, I've done a little bit of damage to a tank, and your opponent's like, okay, alright, that's fine. You didn't bracket it, so sure. Bring back Flyrants. As much as I love Flyrants, which is a lot, it's my favorite unit in all of 40k. I think that they've been good for so long that I feel like maybe it's time for a different unit to be good. I would love it if they were like, all right, guys, the Synaptic Nexus Detachment, whatever it's called, is Hive Tyrants are nuts. They're all like, they get like plus 1 billion attacks and double their speed. And they have a psychic laser cannon. And suddenly everyone's like, triple Hive Tyrant, let's go. And I would be so happy. And that would be like, just make, I own like 5 flying Hive Tyrants, by the way. And that would just like make my day. But on the flip side, Hive Tyrants, like, flying Hive Tyrants have been good in like basically every single edition that they've existed. So, I don't know. It's like fine also if a different unit's good now. If they make like Lictors the star of the show, like, it's kind of like a little tiny flying Hive Tyrant who's like stealthy. Are Spine Fists worth running on Termagants? I think that they are. I think it's, if I remember the math correctly, I think Spine Fists actually technically outdamage Flesh Borers. It's just that they don't have the range. And also, like, Termagant weapon profiles don't really matter, to be honest. Inky's back. What's up, Inky? Let me just grab the Termagant datasheet. Why can't I find it? There we go, I found it. Yeah, so it's 2 shots twin linked instead of 1 shot at higher strength. And they're pistols, so you can shoot them in melee. The downside is the range. So I think that the Termagant Spine Fists are better. Spine Fists on Warriors, I don't believe do anything, right? Because the Warriors' profiles are all the same. Because it's just ranged bioweapon warriors who just have ranged bioweapons. Oh no, they do actually have a profile. What do they give up for Spine Fists? Oh, they replace their Devourer. Yeah, no, you probably want the Devour in the ranged warrior unit because what you might do in the ranged warrior unit is take 1 set of Spine Fists, because then you can advance and do actions with the unit, but you probably don't want to do actions with the warriors anyway, so I would mostly take the longer range stuff because that's kind of where they want to do. That's where they want to be for the most part, but honestly, like, I don't know. Ranged bioweapon warriors are like kind of whatever. But the thing with the Termagants is that, for the most part, their guns aren't high enough strength to actually really matter. So you just, anything that has the assault keyword on it, you're just going to windmill slam, because you want to be able to advance and do actions. So I think either Spine Fist or the Flesh Borer are perfectly fine. Should they unnerf flyers? No, flyers are fine. The problem with flyers right now, I think, is the flyer data sheets. It's not the actual like aircraft rules. The aircraft rules are really cool. The hover rule that lets you remove the aircraft keyword from yourself is like super sweet. It's the stuff that's like, you know, has no defensive abilities and is like a T8 vehicle or whatever. It's just like, oh, if I'm aircraft and I deep strike, then I will just be shot by everyone and die immediately and cost 250 points. And like, that's the issue. The issue is datasheet balance, not necessarily the mechanics. Would I ever recommend somebody buy 2 Sisters Combat Patrols? Probably. 2 Sisters Combat Patrols is probably fine. I don't know if I would buy 3, but 2 is probably okay. It's not like, none of the combat patrols, as far as I know, are like such good value that you just want to stack them. The Battle Force boxes back in like 5th edition used to be like that, where they were just like so good you would just buy a stack of them and build an army out of them. But none of the combat patrols are necessarily like that. So I would generally speaking warn people off buying multiple of any combat patrol. But if you got a huge discount on combat patrols and wanted to get multiple Sisters ones, it'd probably be okay. You're never gonna feel bad about having more than 1 Rhino. How would I rank the Termi weapon options against each other? I would probably say like the Spine Fist is probably the best, and then the Devourer, and then the Flesh Borer, and then the Devourer. The Devourer is just like stone garbage. It's really bad. Ryan, Flesh Boar's at the bottom? No. They're Assault. You want the Assault weapon so you can do actions. How much do I think the datasheets will change in the Codex? I don't expect it to change much. It sounds like they'll add some keywords. And they might rework a couple of mechanics, but I don't think... I wouldn't expect like huge changes. Drukhari Combat Patrol is the king? I did rank the Combat Patrols at one point. I just don't remember what's in them. Oh, yeah, it has a Raider and a Ravager. Yeah. Yeah, the Drukhari Combat Patrol is, like, pretty gold. The problem... You get multiple Archons, which isn't great. And honestly, like, you're rarely more than, like, 2 Raiders into a list right now, but... I mean, Drukhari if you're playing for the long game, Drukhari Raiders will most likely be playable at some point. Right now, they're good, but not amazing. But at some point, they'll be broken again, and then you could just be happy that you own a bunch of them. Although, like, honestly, Cabalite Warriors aren't that good. But you're always in for, like, 2 units, usually. Yeah, so you're like... This feels like a buy 2. Seems solid. Just like a Combat Patrol list. Are Suppressor Marines only in the Combat Patrol box? I think that they are. I don't believe that they're anywhere else. The Guard one was good. You just get the Ordnance batteries, which aren't that great, but otherwise everything's pretty solid. I don't know why this is like... Oh, it's not cut off. It's fine. The Leagues of Votann one is fine if you assemble Uthar as a regular call. The Grey Knight one's okay because Librarians are nuts, and the entire Grey Knights faction is built out of these 2 kits anyway, so you're probably just going to be purchasing those regardless. Black Templars is good for Black Templar stuff because you always take my Crusader squads. Oh, and the AdMech one's solid. The AdMech one's really good, actually. The only like kind of dud in the AdMech one is maybe the Tech Priest engines here. But if you put him on a 40mm base and tell people he's like a Dominus, nobody will look at you funny. But you're always like in for 2 or 3 units of Skitarii. You're always in for Cataphrons. You're always in for Onager Dune Crawlers. Like, everything in that box is solid. And the Genestealer Cult one. Everything in the Genestealer Cult box is solid, too. The Orc one has a Death Dread. I don't rate the Orc one, honestly. The War Boss model is, like, kind of bad. I guess you're, like, 0 to 1 on the Foot War Boss. So, like, the Foot War Boss is playable. He's fine. I don't know if many people take the Def Cop does, but I think they're, like, fringe okay. But the Death Dread is just, like, fail mode. That dude is just, like, wasted value. That unit's so bad. The Thousand Suns one? Yeah. The Thousand Suns one came out, if I remember correctly, it was because they came out with the Flesh Meld Pact? Is that what it was called? The Warp Meld Pact? The Army of Renown that was like thousands of Zangors? which I streamed. I actually streamed a couple games at some local tournaments. There's a guy in a couple states north of me who plays like Warp Meld packs competitively, or did in 9th edition, and he was like his win rate was like insane. His biggest loss condition was clocking out because his army was so difficult to play, but it was like it had like so many like deep strikes and reactive moves. The entire army made it like a normal move before the game started, and then got an invulnerable save, and so it was just like it just pushed you off primary so hard. It was like 120 obsec bodies that like double moved and then could like double move again with Temporal Surge and like Umbralific Crystal around, and like the army was actually nuts. It's weird now though. Zangors are kind of big Sag now. Are Death Dreads that bad? Yeah, they're not great. They're like I think the cost, if I remember correctly, is just like they're like wildly overpriced. Let's grab their data sheet. They're like a 2+8 vehicle, which is fine, but they're like 9 wounds, and I think they're like 160 points or something. For like a big move 6 idiot. Oh, 8 wounds. Excuse me. I said 9. I overestimated. They're only 8 wounds. 150 points for an 8 wound vehicle. That moves 8 inches and I guess like gets advantage charge once per game. It has like the possibility to shoot, but it's really bad. It could like attack a bunch of times, but doesn't have any rerolls. So it's like you could get up to 8 attacks with it on like hit 3s into 4s into most stuff at only AP2. And then you're not taking any of the guns. And the guns are realistic skill 5, so you like need a mech to buff it. So it's actually like a 200 point combo at that point. And if your opponent points like a single anti-vehicle weapon at it, just dies. I think it's just the defensive stats. If this was like 10 or 11 wounds, I think it would be fine. 8 wounds is so low. It's like, oh my god. 8 wounds is just sad times. All right, chat. I think we'll probably wrap things up. If anybody has any closing thoughts, I'll go ahead and throw them in there. But it seems like a pretty good discussion. Talked about some lists. Talked about some Adeptus Sororitas. A lot of Adeptus Sororitas, actually. It is strength. It's strength 10, right? Yeah, the Death Shred is strength 10 in melee. Like its melee profile is not that bad. It's 8 attacks is strength 10. If it was strength 8, it'd be really bad. But yeah, it's like 150 points for like a slow thing that is like really easy to kill and like okay in melee, I guess. It's like not that amazing. 4 Scorches, no close combat weapons. Let's go. Did we find any Votan? I did not see any Votan doing well, chat. There's a 3 and 2 Votan from Factorum. Einherjar Champions, 1 call, triple Hearthkin, 4 Sagitors, double Brokir, double Einherjar Hearthguard. Yeah, the Einherjar Hearthguard plus the as like delivery systems for the Einherjar Champions is like sort of been I think where the faction's been going slowly but surely, but 3-2 is like sort of the best we can get. Triple Hernkin Pioneers, which you kind of have to have for the utility, and then you're sort of holding out for the heavy infantry to do your damage because it's like 4 Sagittors with Hearthkin Warriors in them to buy table space. It seems like good at scoring secondaries, but it's a little pillow-fisted. Although I think that's to be expected. The bigger stuff is like really bad. It's so tough to get value out of the land fortresses without being like really reliably being able to buff them, which is unfortunate. What do I think will take a change in the September data slate? Oh, I mean Eldar. That's like an easy. That's an easy peasy bet. Easy peasy. Make money on that bet. In terms of specific changes, I don't think I can speak to specific changes. Definitely points are going to increase for sure. Whether or not they roll their sleeves up and get to like tinkering into the faction itself, they need that, but we'll see. Emissary or Assimilator or both disregarding points? That's a great question. I think right now, given everything we know right now, the Emissary is better just because it has an invulnerable save. The Assimilator has more interesting shooting attacks, but at shorter range, we don't know what its other abilities are. But it sounds like the Assimilator also has better melee attacks, so that might be the way to go. We have to just look at the rest of their data sheet and their abilities. But I would say because the unit, it feels like it's predicated on just like standing on an objective and tanking forever, having a 4+ invulnerable save on top of that, on top of their other abilities is good. Although, it's not the most impactful thing, because they already have a 2+ armor save, and you can get cover by putting like the stupid scenic part of their base behind a wall, for whatever reason. So they're basically the 4+ invulnerable save doesn't help that much. It only helps against AP 4+ or in melee, and that's less useful. If someone was to rumor core rules changes with the data slate coming, what's my prediction? Towering changes, I think. I don't. It's tough to. Games Workshop, they love the fact that knights interact with line of sight blockers. They love the fact that knights interact with true line of sight. But the problem is that it's never been good. And I think that there are many ways that they could like keep the true line of sight interactions but make it less abusive. And I think that part of the reason we're having so much trouble with Wraith Knights is because of their towering keyword. And I think it gets easier to rein in if they abuse it less. So I would probably gander a towering change. Glad I snagged the old Phobos combat patrol before it went away. Yeah, to just get debuffed, basically. Yeah. The Shadow Spear box was solid in 8th edition. Everything in the Shadow Spear box was good, which was sweet. Let's be honest, Phantasm isn't going away. Yeah. It's not going away, but my hope is that it gets nerfed. I mean, like I said before, I think it's probably a safe bet that either they keyword lock it to like infantry and mounted, or they make it once per game. I think one of the two is probably going to happen, if they decide to change actual rules. Yeah, the emissaries are going to look great in the middle of an army. I kind of hope that it sounded like the emissary was going to be more of a, like, buff piece, like more of a support unit, and the assimilator was going to be more of like a linchpin. And I kind of hope that happens, and I hope that you're less incentivized to take multiple of them, because it looks like kind of a monopose kit. So having multiple is probably going to have sort of diminishing returns. So I almost hope that you're disincentivized from taking more than one. But we'll see. Inky's back. Inky, you want to say goodbye to the channel? Say goodbye to chat. Nope, she wants to snuggle. All right. You're on my microphone cord. There you go. They only keyword add mech stratagems? Yeah. Lock add mech stratagems to their doctrines, so you can't use them all at one time. Yeah. I guess it's also Drukhari, right? Because Drukhari can only use certain stratagems on some of their units, whereas basically no other faction does that. Add mech and Drukhari. What a classic combination. All right, chat. I think I'm going to go ahead and hop off. Thought that the Emissary was going to be a Hive Tyrant Plus. Yeah. It is a little bit funny that they're very different, but I also kind of expected that. But we got something else. We got a big beater, which I think is something the faction kind of needs right now, so that's good. All right. Yeah, I'm going to hop off, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me. I think it was kind of a fun, chill day. And we'll see what we have to talk about next week. So I make no promises about the comments in the next stream, the content in the next stream. We'll probably have more Tyranid stuff to talk about. I imagine we'll actually have the full codex at that point. So we'll have some Tyranid stuff to cover. But yeah, until then, I'm gonna hop off. So cheers, everybody, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.